the chronicle of American business and technology, the ERPodcast.
Welcome to this episode of the ERPodcast, where we meet Benjamin Langley of SuiteGeneration, an up-and-coming NetSuite consulting firm operating out of the EU, but serving clients all over the EU and US and some time zones beyond. Today, we're going to answer that question. When it comes to profit from ERP, which is both the name of our firm and should be the name of your goal, when it comes to profit from ERP, what's your software consultant's expertise? And our answer is we don't employ a bench of software consultants, which gives us flexibility to select the absolute best from the best available resources worldwide for our clients' projects. At Profit from ERP, our only incentive is your success, which happens primarily by developing a top-performing internal team and connecting you with great consultants to help us make all of that happen. ERP is an industry with constant turnover, layoffs, mergers, reduction in force. So we look to tie top consultants directly to each client. So a year from now or 10 years from now, you can still contact the consultant that implemented your system. We find out what our clients need first, then we source the proper affiliate consultant. We've been proponents of this model to put the right consultants on the right projects since 2005, and it really works. So let's drop in on the interview between myself and Ben Langley of SuiteGeneration.
The ERPodcast.
All right, welcome to episode 35 of the ERPodcast. We're talking with SuiteGeneration's Ben Langley. He's a senior NetSuite consultant, does a lot of work with implementation, solution architecture, PM, all of that type of thing. And he works out of Barcelona, Spain. How are you today, Ben? How are things in Barcelona?
Hey, Gene. Very good. Bit hot, but getting through it. I'm obviously originally English, so the heat's a killer for me, but I'm hoping one day I'll get used to it. Everything's good.
In Arizona this morning, I got out on my bicycle early. The sun was barely up, and I thought, it feels wonderful out here. And I looked at my watch, and it was 87 degrees.
Damn.
When 87 starts feeling wonderful to you, you know you're living in a place that's way too hot.
Yeah, all relative for sure.
Well, speaking of hot stuff, today we wanted to talk about NetSuite, and early on I was not a big NetSuite fan because clients would not put their data on the internet. They were afraid of it. It was in the early days of the internet. People weren't used to that. And we didn't see anybody really going with it. And I thought, oh boy, this will never take off. But around 2014, people started, now we're buying big ticket items over the internet and putting our credit card numbers everywhere and everything like that. And CFOs even joined the game and started implementing NetSuite, and it just really took off. And I think the popularity is because of the recency of development. A lot of the other programs, they move them onto a cloud version, but it's the same 1980s DOS cloud base. They got that DOS layer, and then they've got a Windows layer, and then a client server layer, and all of these different layers. And now they put it on the cloud, and it's just not the same thing as something that was developed during the cloud. Anyway, it took off and was one of the first cloud-based softwares. Everybody imitated it, going along and everything like that. But the growth was 30% year after year, and they just kept doing it, and they kept doing it, and they kept doing it. A couple of years ago, there were something like 18,000 companies using it. And I looked at some of the recent stuff, and it's now like up to 44,000 people using it. And one of the things that, when you're doubling in size every 3 or 4 years and stuff like that, it's hard to keep up with the consulting side of it. Talk about a little bit about your business and your typical clients. And you mentioned that you guys do a lot of rescues.
Yeah, that's right. So we primarily focus upon NetSuite within wholesale distribution, manufacturing, e-commerce, retail, those kind of things. And what we noticed was that there was such a high failure rate on ERP implementations for NetSuite. We realized there was a niche in the market for our skill set. You've got to be incredibly experienced to rescue and implementation, because there are so many different moving parts. And we specifically work with clients who have just started the implementation process right up to 12 months after they've gone live. So it's quite a tricky customer base to work with, but we have very good success rates. So we're pretty happy with our niche.
How long has NetSuite been popular in the European continent?
Well, I started back in 2018 and it really started taking off, I would say around 2022. That's when it started heating up over here. It's still not on par with the US market in terms of companies moving on to it or using it, but it's definitely growing. Particularly in Germany, it's growing a lot. People moving off SAP. But yeah, I'm seeing a massive uptick in clients. I used to only work with US clients. Now I work with a lot of European clients.
So 2017, 2018, somewhere around that area, I went to a NetSuite training class in Denver, and I was very surprised to see that there were people there from all over the world. There were people from Japan and Southeast Asia and Australia and England, Ireland. Germany was represented, and what I think drove a lot of that was that when NetSuite has always had some ties with Larry Ellison and Oracle going all the way back. He was an angel investor in the beginning. But when Oracle officially bought them and merged them into the system, you know, great success in the United States. And now Oracle says, let's throw in a lot of development and take this thing worldwide, just like our other products and that type of thing. And I think that spurred a lot of that. Would
Yeah,
you agree?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was a massive uptick. So I entered around 2018 and I was just at the start of the wave. There were a lot of small consulting companies starting off. I actually started off in the merchant navy when I was younger. I went into the merchant navy when I was 19. I came out when I was about 27, and I just happened to have the right set of skills from the navy to jump into NetSuite. You wouldn't think there was a lot of crossover, but we use similar systems. Um, and I just rode the wave, in terms of, projects all the way through. So it's been a great run. I don't think it's, a lot of people say that it's slowing down. I don't think it's slowing down, really. There's
Yeah.
still lots and lots of people moving on to NetSuite.
And I mean, there's an 80% failure rate across the industry. And when we say failure, we mean, did it go live on time? And if you're a month or two behind going when you plan to go live, that's not a big deal, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times it's expected functionality. Clients and demos think they're seeing something, but what they're showing is not what they think they're seeing, right? And it's anytime you're looking at new software, it's completely foreign. And so you think you project on it what you want to see, right?
Yeah.
And so that happens, and that can be serious in certain situations. But then there's cost overruns that can be just deadly. I mean, not deadly, but people lose their jobs over it when they went in with a $200,000 budget and it ends up being $450,000 to get everything live. I mean, there's all kinds of stories like that. And, NetSuite, it's, you get any software faces these problems in the ERP area. And my thought is that so often it's the clients that cause the problems there. I mean, in your rescues, how much work do you have to do to change the outlook and how the clients are seeing things versus just going in and fixing things that other people didn't do properly?
I'd say that's like 90% of my job, to be honest. So, you mentioned about people projecting what they want from a system. That's, they go onto the sales call, they wind and dine, they say, they have the spiel given to them, this is going to change your company's ability to scale. And, it looks great on paper. But also, you know, when you go on those demo calls, they're not going to go through every use case you could potentially get.
Right.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of companies fall down. They have this expectation that moving across to a new ERP, or just, moving on to their first ERP, is going to be super simple. And it's just not, because it is a whole process change for them, right? They have to, we talk about adopting versus adapting. Okay. And a lot of companies, they say that they're trying to adopt the ERP's way of doing things, but they're not really. And that's kind of where the failures spike a lot. They want to take their old legacy processes through into NetSuite, right? They're buying a product that looks shiny, a new UI, but they want their old processes from their previous system. And that's just not the way you want to do this. You might as well stick with your old legacy systems and save yourself a load of money and a lot of pain. So trying to get my clients to understand, hey, this is what NetSuite does. This is what this is what you think NetSuite should do. This is what it actually does. And this is how we can make it work for you. Those are three very different conversations which you have to have with clients. Also, I think that a lot of people are not ready for digital transformation.
Right.
Particularly from a data point of view. Do you even have the data to even use an ERP? Because if you don't have the data, it's just a very nice user interface, and that's it. It's not going to do anything.
When I first started my career, I was just out of business school, and I was working with this newly formed e-commerce, everything system. And I found a client, and they liked the program, and they said that, hey, this is great for us. And I said, now we need to talk about change management, right? And they said, oh, you don't have to worry about us, Gene. We embrace change. They'd read several books that use that phrase, so they figured that's what it was. And It's like, I go back a week later and I go, how are things going? And it's the controller had quit. And everybody was throwing up their hands and they were ready to quit after a week. And I said, guys, I thought you embraced change. And they go, we do, but this change is not like we thought it was going to be, which is kind of the definition of change, right? And so anyway, that is a big deal. That is a big deal. So other than clients, I mean, have you had a chance to work with clients that have their training done up front so that they at least know some of what the software is going to do as it goes through?
Yeah. And it makes a massive difference just in terms of how the implementation goes, because these guys they're clued up on how the system works. They're able to ask better questions of their consultants. Consultants don't always, the consultants are meant to ask the right questions.
Right.
But they're not going to get everything, and getting the client feedback to bounce ideas off you from a position of knowledge makes a massive difference in how the end solution looks. So I feel like clients getting proper training before they start this process is a massive advantage to them.
See, what we coach our clients to do is, first of all, when you buy NetSuite, they don't have go through a partner, go direct through NetSuite, whoever you deal with. They don't have people just sitting around waiting for you to buy some software and they're going to race over the following day. Everybody's booked up. They're working with other clients and things, and it's generally 30 days or so before they can free up and come and start to work on your project. And that 30 days is critically important with NetSuite. We always license the Learning Center, and then I assign all of the different people in the different departments to go in and start going through the learning classes that involve what they're going to do in their day-to-day. And at first they kind of reject it, but I keep having meetings, and the Learning Center will show the leader there that how much time people have been spending in it. So you kind of embarrass them the first meeting. And then they start spending an hour a day in their classes and doing things like that. And that does two things. One, it helps them learn the new system, and it exposes them to the new system. And then when they go back to their old system and do the actual work, they're understanding the differences between what they saw in the training class and how I'm doing this day after day. And they have a chance to start thinking about, is this new way going to be better? Am I going to lose something that's really important? Is there something that's overlooked? And I don't care. I go, through every department, talk to everybody that I can, to find out what they need in ERP and all that kind of stuff. There's always people that are doing the actual work that you don't get a chance to talk to, that know about some functions that maybe the director of the department doesn't know so much about, right? Because he hasn't done it for 10 years. He's been a manager for 10 years, right? And they're doing it day to day to day, and they know how that has to work. Anyway, by the time the consultants come in, I've seen it where our team the client team has been telling the consultant, here's how we want to use this and make it work. And I've heard some of the clients go, well, that's good. It can do it that way, but let's look at this way, and they show them how to do it. But now we're having a discussion versus in the old way to do it, the first day or two of the consultant talking to that department is showing them all the fields that are in the software and telling them what they do. And now let's decide how we're going to set this up and which one of these fields we're going to use and which ones we're going to take off the screens. So it cuts 2 days of consulting off right there because they're already exposed to everything, and it makes them active participants, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it does. I think also when they do training up front, it gives them a greater appreciation of just how difficult it is to implement,
Right.
and how much thought has to go into reshaping their processes to benefit them, right? Because like I said, with the legacy system love that we talk about, when they love their legacy system so much, they never wanted to go across to NetSuite in the first place, right? We've got to make them like the system, and then they've got to start thinking about how it's going to benefit them. So it changes the whole mindset in a big, big way.
Yeah, actually, I think that's one of the best practices that we can do, because when you get the team engaged, it makes a world of difference. It really does. And it avoids a lot of those situations where things just fall apart. And, back to the growing consulting group, I don't know. I mean, we work really hard with teams such as yourself that have the experience, that have done it before, and we know getting into this. The last system that I saved, the consulting team had a NetSuite practice, and they brought in an Intact competitor so the client could look at two things. And the Intact competitor didn't have that. It was their first implementation. And they thought the client would recognize that. They'll go with us. We'll make a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. And, I think, I don't know that for sure. I can't say that for sure, but that's what it sounded like they had done. And it was just a disaster. And, I was able to get in and get in touch with some people in the Intact world that I knew that were good, at the project. And I talked to the people at Intact. I had a relationship with them going back 20 years. And we were able to save that and get them live 90 days later. So good success story, wonderful, wonderful type stuff. But there's just so much out there, and people that don't have somebody knowledgeable in the beginning aren't going to see that coming. And that kind of leads to that 80% failure rate, and we talked a little bit about end to end, going all the way. And when what that means is getting consultants in to start planning things, and which is what we do at Profit from ERP, before we ever start looking at software, and then, understanding what's critical so that as we do go through those demos, people can see it and all that type of stuff. And it fits better. So one of the things I realized that we would go in and do sales and sales presentations and stuff early in my career. And then the consultants would come in, and their first 2 or 3 days were shock, because we had thought of ways to do things with the software, and that was not their normal process. And they're sitting there going, we've got to deliver on these promises. Why didn't they bring us into the sales thing? Well, because you're billing out at, $175 an hour, and you don't have time to do that. But we wanted to make sure that NetSuite's a good fit. for any client, going in. And early on, I would bring different clients to NetSuite, and they go, "We really don't play well there. That this is probably not a good deal for us. We need, you should probably look towards these guys or those guys," that type of thing. When you're in doing a rescue, is part of that it didn't fit properly, or is it more how they implemented that causes the problem? Because let's talk about a rescue, right?
Yeah, so I'd say in terms of, whether it was a bad fit or they didn't prep well enough and didn't do it, the implementation went wrong for whatever reason. I'd say generally NetSuite can be made to fit because it's very customizable. However, whether the client was aware that it would need to be customized that much to fit their needs is another thing.
Right,
Okay. So that's kind of the disconnect, I think, because obviously they see demos and the demos are great, but then when it comes to their own processes, there's a lot of customization needed. So I think the phase 0, where you go through, you get your vision, you look at your existing processes, you try to correct them in your legacy system, you clean your data, you start cleaning your data early on. That makes a big difference in the selection process, because rather than just being told, hey, this is how NetSuite will fit you and how it can make your business a lot of money, the people who have done phase 0, they already know, hey, this is how our business should run. Is this possible within NetSuite? Can we facilitate this and then grow this within NetSuite? Right?
right,
Does that
right.
make sense to you?
Yeah, no, absolute sense, absolute sense. And the old IBM rule, which is a really old rule, but it still applies. It's like you can spend $1 in planning, you can spend $10 to fix it during implementations, or you can spend $100 on um, data development after you've gone live. Right? It's the 110-100 rule. It's best to spend that dollar in planning. And
Yeah.
it's an old rule, but it still applies because truth works forever, type thing. Anyway, that's important. That's important. So clients, you go worldwide, correct?
That's right. We mainly work with clients in the US and the UK. We've had some clients in Australia, but the time zone difference is
That one's a
slightly
little
difficult
tough.
for us. Yeah, it kind of gets tiring on that split. But
Yeah.
yeah, we've done stuff like that before. But yeah, mainly in the US and the UK right now. Some in mainland Europe,
Yep.
France, Germany, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Okay. Well, that sounds good. Hey, how can people get in touch with you guys?
We've got a website. So if you go to SuiteGeneration.net, you can reach out to us there. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, under Benjamin Langley. And yeah, I'm available over email as well. And you find that on the website.
Anything else you think people should know when they're looking for NetSuite help and consulting and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think one thing that I think clients should use to kind of protect themselves would be perhaps the way that they agree to be billed by the consulting firm. So a lot of consulting firms will push for T&M, so just time and
T&M is
material,
time and
time and
material.
materials,
Yep.
and I think they can get a much better result if they go with fixed fee, and to base that upon just milestones, deliverables, and so right when you deliver, you get that. We do a lot of we do milestone billing as well as T&M sometimes, but generally we'll agree with our clients for that because we know how to deliver. So that's something which clients can use to save themselves from going over budget.
Well, there's this one secret in the industry where people ask how much does ERP cost, and the answer is too much.
Yeah.
It is expensive, and the implementation teams are expensive. Some of the bigger teams are now charging $275, $300 an hour for consultants, which good, nice money if you can get it. But and then they are looking at these costs of the software. They're looking at the cost of the implementation project, and the salespeople always come back with, "Well, if you do more of the work, there'll be fewer hours, right?" And every they're all going to say, oh yeah, we'll take on more of the work. And it's like, well, how many systems have you implemented? You're the customer and you don't know what the work entails. Right. And even though you have every intention of doing that, it's really hard to do. Now, with fixed fee, when it's going to be a fixed price, you're taking a risk that they're going to be able to do their part, because there's certain things customers have to do. They have to clean up their data. They know their data. They need to know what they're going to bring in and how much. We haven't sold any of these things in 23 years. Do we really need to update them and bring them in? All those kinds of things. You're taking a risk that they're going to perform their side of the deal, right?
That's right. Yeah. And that's why I think a lot of the time consulting firms won't offer fixed fee, because there's a lot of, say, flexibility on the client side in terms of whether the client performs.
Right.
So it's also about picking the right client, right? And assessing whether they are even ready to go ahead with this,
Right.
And again, that's where your kind of services come in, Gene. You tell them whether they're ready for it or not.
And we also tell them about scope creep too, because it's not, if it happens, it's going to happen. You're going to get into the system and you're going to start learning about the system, and you're going to say, oh, look at this shiny new bauble over here. We want to do that too. And you, Ben, have put together a fixed fee that doesn't include getting into that area, but they want to do it. And we talk about putting in or we can push it back to the next phase and say, okay, let us get you live on the basics, and then we can come back and do that. Or, a change order, and now our fixed fee has gone up by 2%, 3%, whatever it's going to take to do this extra work on it as well. And like, I have a very low record of getting a CFO to not want that shiny new object, right? I mean, they always want it. We want it. Oh no, we got to have this. Da 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 da. Do you see a lot of that when you get into fixed fee? People wanting things that are out of scope.
Yeah, and it really is just a case of having a very strong documentation process, saying, look, this is what we've agreed as part of the strategy. This is what we can implement for that cost. Obviously, it's going to cost more if you want that. And if you can show that and say, look, I don't think there's any major benefit to you adding this on, then they're generally okay with that. But if they really want it, then obviously it's a chargeable service, right?
Yeah,
because it's going to take more hours. I think a lot of consulting firms lack in the ability to document what they've done, because consulting is intensive, right? And then you've got to go back, you've got to write everything down, you've got to have a paper trail of everything. That's intense, right? And most consulting firms don't do that. So it's easier to do T&M, time and materials. But that documentation process is massively important, actually. Even just as part of our consulting process, we should do that anyway, not just from a billing point of view, just for the client to move forward, right? So if I don't properly scope out a part of the project, like say it's something simple, like a functional requirements document that's, we've got to change it, right? If I don't scope that out and update everything, okay, say 5 years down the line, that customization within the functional requirements document needs to be changed. Maybe SuiteGeneration is moved into other industries, okay? They need to bring in another consulting firm to change that, right? And if there's no documentation, it doubles their costs sometimes to find out how things work.
I've had projects like that, and it's you go in and you say, okay, who implemented this for you? And they say, oh, we had a guy.
Yeah. Who's that guy?
And where is he? And how come he didn't write anything down? And now you're merging and you're merging in with Johnson & Johnson, and they use SAP, and they've got some requirements for you that you need done right away. And we have no idea who put this ball of string together, right? And so it's super expensive. And cases like that, it was really a rush to figure it out and get some people in there that knew what was going on. Fortunately, we had a deep bench with the partner we were working with, and they could put enough people in there to figure it out. But it's like you really need that documentation in the future of how this is going to work, because things are going to happen.
Yeah. If you can, if you can hire resources internally that can do that for the duration of the project, I feel
Yep.
like it sets you up massively for success as well, in terms of just optimizing your system later on down the line, or even when you move on to another system, because you've got those processes there set in stone almost, right? I mean, sure, a lot of the time these things go out of date, but again, that's once you've implemented and you've got this documentation, maybe you can maintain those practices moving forward, right, as you
It sounds
scale.
good. I know we're all developing new uses of AI that are really turning out to be promising, so that we can record a lot of the discussions and things like that, and then have records of use that for record keeping as well. So those are some areas that probably too early to talk about just yet, but areas that we are using to do better jobs for our clients in the long run. Anything else you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think I'm okay, Gene. I think we've covered everything.
Good.
But yeah, good to be here, Gene. Hopefully we do it again soon.
Well, I first met Ben through some of the content that he has on LinkedIn. Excited to have you here on the ERPodcast and introduce you to the audience and all that type of stuff. So we'll be talking more later.
For sure, Gene. Good
All
stuff.
right.
You take care.
Good deal. Thanks so much. Great interview with Ben. He's one of the many NetSuite consulting groups we work with. We also have relationships with consultants in the Microsoft Dynamics area, Sage Intacct, Infor. That list goes on and on. ERP vendors of all types, as well as like field service teams, manufacturing groups, warehouse management, FP&A. 25 years in the business and a few hundred clients gets you exposed to a lot of different technologies and a lot of different technical consulting teams that make it all work. One more thing, ERP software consultants currently charge you between $250 and $275 per hour, reflecting their highly specialized skill and strong demand, and that's how you get your system implemented. At Profit from ERP, our approach is to offer billable hours at a much more affordable rate, depending upon, of course, the resource, so we replace those very expensive hours with more reasonable hours. But you know what? In September 2025, we are offering an absolutely free 30-minute and up to an hour-long block for preliminary consulting to anyone whose company is interested in ERP selection and implementation. We can discuss full-time consulting projects where we help your company, or we can simply just refer you out to some of our more talented resources, such as SuiteGeneration, who you met Ben Langley in today's episode. All just to get you started on the right track. Either way, there's no cost, no obligation. We've set aside a couple of hours in the morning, a couple of afternoon sessions, and you can sign up through Calendly. Our Calendly link will be in the show notes or right here. And it's totally free, no charge. And as always, with our free advice, we offer a double your money back guarantee. So what do you have to lose, huh? Anyway, registration's open on Calendly. We'll soon be able to say that. Registration's open on Calendly. That's of September 2025. It's a limited time offer. I don't know how long we're going to do this. We'll see how well it works. And you'll see how well it works too. Anyway, it's our job to get you connected to the right people, the right project management protocols, creating guardrails and steering you around those common pitfalls. Everything you need to create profit from ERP. And you know what? We will actually save you money in the process. And we'll get into that further. The entire profit from ERP process is going to be outlined on the next episode of the ERPodcast. So look forward to that in the next week or two. I'm your host, Gene Hammonds, founder and managing director of Profit from ERP, wishing you a profitable day.
The ERPodcast, a production of Rolling Thunder Studios.